Hello, YouTube land. This is Brent and Son coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. In today's show, we're going to have Mark come back on, and he is going to share with us the dangers of Bigfoot hunting. It is a very dangerous pastime to have, I can guarantee you that. So we're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss also the stealthiness of the Sasquatch. And I'm telling you that it is amazing to me how stealthy and how these creatures are able to sneak up and be within feet of you and you not notice it. So we're going to talk about that amongst some other interesting stuff that we're going to touch on in this episode. So you don't want to miss this, I promise you. If anyone out there has an interesting story, an encounter with Bigfoot, Dogman, or any other type of mystery, cryptid creature, or any kind of good story that you want to share, you can contact me at brentandson@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to look at what you have and I'll contact you. So just leave some information there a way to get a hold of you. And I promise you I'll get back to you at some point and maybe have you on the show or something. Anyway, let's go to our guest, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you. All right, Mark, the last time you were on, we talked about the time that you encountered these creatures, but you didn't quite see them. They growled at you and you ran back to your truck because you didn't really know what the heck. You kind of figured it was Sasquatch, but it was a very scary thing. And then we talked about the footprints you were finding. We talked about the encounter you had with the albino Sasquatch, the big one that jumped 30 feet onto the trail and parted the palm fronds and looked at you. And we talked about the two separate campers that come up missing, and they found one but wouldn't tell you what happened, how he died, and the other one they never found, and it wasn't in the news. We talked about the fence that you built around this place when you were contracting, where it's leaning inward at the top to keep stuff in, not people from getting into the park, but keep stuff in the park in there. And we talked about several really interesting things. This time, I think it would be interesting to speak about the dangers of what you're doing, because some of the videos kind of scared me for you. And we were just talking a second ago before we came on the show here about you getting hit with that log, and I was also asking you a little bit about that growl the second time you went to that exact same spot. If you would, let's kind of start with that and kind of the dangerous situation that you're in.
I look at everything that's going on, and really when we first started going in the field and all these things were happening, we really had no clue, even though I'd already seen one. Because in my mind, it was too much to believe that there were this many of these guys out there. And we were at least 15 miles away from where I'd had my encounter. Even though my brother found a big track there, you still question all this stuff. So, you know, with the stuff that we've had happen that really triggered us to go into these areas and start researching, you know, it is dangerous. And I think that a lot of the time when we're heading in the areas, I know for me, I get knots in my stomach in the morning.
Right.
Really, before we go, we do a lot of nighttime stuff too, and that's the worst. The nighttime stuff is the worst. And you know, I mean, I know people have a tendency to think that these guys are active at night only and this and that from the programming. But the bottom line is, if you go on the internet, you're going to see that 99% of the photos are in the daytime.
Right.
The videos are in the day. They're taken in the daytime, and it is a fact now that we know that they are very active in the daytime. The morning hours, certain times of the year, you're going to get more activity in the early morning hours because the ambient temperature has been released in the summertime. The summertime, it heats up pretty good here, so they're pretty they're pretty inactive in those, 11:30 to 4 p.m. kind of hours because it's in excess of 100 degrees, even if you're under the canopy. But what we've noticed is that they are active pretty much all the time, and so when we're gearing up for an expedition, and we've already had the things that we've had happen, which you can see in the journals. It's there's a lot of apprehension. When I got hit with the dead branch, the big dead branch, that was literally the first time that I realized, whoa, we went there because we were documenting a structure that I didn't think kids built or somebody else built. And so we're leaving after dark from documenting that structure, and it's the same place that my brother found the big track. And I start hearing footsteps and bushes moving, big movement, And I'm looking over at Melanie, and she's hearing it, and I'm like, is this really happening? It's like you just don't expect that. And so after I had gone down in there and I got hit with the branch, I started having nightmares. Because I knew that the only way I was going to get them on film, and at this point it was still if it was them in this particular area, was that if I was going to have to go in there. And then, the first time I went down in there to try to get them on film, it was dark. And so the footage is dark. I mean, what's going on.
Yeah.
The camera's rolling, and I get drilled. And, but, it started really bugging me, man. I was having nightmares.
Well, imagine. And, I mean, after you got hit with that the first time, this thing hit you with a log, and luckily it was a dead log. But my goodness, man, it's just so hard to comprehend how you went back there. It's unbelievable.
The next morning we went in, and that's when we got growled at. We went right back to the same spot, 5 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't light out. It was darker than it was when we were leaving. Right. And the GoPro that we have, actually, when we were leaving the night before, and I went down in there, the GoPro is really an excellent little camera, man, because it picks up a lot of ambient light. Right. And until it gets pitch black, and then it's done. Right. But if there's even just a little waning light, it picks it up, and it actually amplifies it on the footage. So where you see a little bit of light in the footage of me getting hit with that big branch, it really is black with the naked eye. And, and then the video we're working on now covers that extensively, and you're going to see a Sasquatch standing right there in front of us. But to go back the next morning,
now
hold on, like almost throwing up the next morning.
Well, before you go on there, when you got on the footage, and I want everybody to know, you can go to his channel and watch where he gets hit by this branch, and you can go and you can hear this thing growl, and oh my gosh, it scared me. And I didn't even want to go outside, and I live in the city. It was very scary. But after you got hit with that branch, I noticed that you didn't say anything. And I know on the second footage, you beat.
I was reviewing that today. Like I know exactly what you're getting at with that. And I was thinking about it today because I'm editing the film. And, we've had so many conversations about the things that have happened. But that in particular, because it triggered us going back to conduct research, it was like, at that point, we were like, something serious going on here. When I got hit with that, I was so terrified.
Yes, that's what I was getting to.
Just from going down in the bushes. Because first of all, it's pitch black, and we have numerous venomous snakes that are in these areas. Second of all, we have a lot of hogs, and they bed down. They're very active at night, but in this particular area, there are a lot of hogs, big hogs, in excess of 200 pounds. A lot of the hogs that we have in this area are over 200 pounds. And there's a board, man, within 300 yards of where this happened. It'll tell you there's hundreds being killed. There's a board. It tells you deer kills, hog kills, turkey kills. Right. And, so I'm used to being here, so I already know. You don't just wander down in somewhere in the dark like that, let alone a place where it's so thick and so tangly, you're going to be falling down if you're not careful. So just going down in there, I was freaked out, let alone the fact that we were hearing walking
Right.
down
Yeah.
off the
Yeah.
levee right in front of us. And I'm not talking about bushes moving where you don't know what's going on. It could be a raccoon. I'm talking about walking.
Right.
And that's where the shock was coming in. And I was like, on camera, you're going to see it. If you watch the episode, it's the new one. This the first time I really showed all the footage in its entirety of that actual occurrence. And I'm like, well, this is what we do. And I start heading down in there. And it's dark. And, I looked at it when I got hit and I stood up. And it suddenly occurred to me that I really didn't know, in hindsight, what was happening.
Yeah.
It did not occur to me that I just had something thrown at me.
Right.
I just got knocked down. The camera got knocked out of my hand. I had bruises across my chest where it hit me.
Yeah.
But I just got back up and I was standing there, and because I was so much in the moment, and the adrenaline was so high, and psychologically I was so focused on trying to see what was around me.
Right.
It didn't even occur to me, man. The adrenaline and the fear and all that stuff, and that's something that we have to deal with. Emotional management is something that we have to deal with when we're in these situations, or we're wasting our time. If you can't hold the camera still to document what's happening, you might as well not be there. So that's something we really have to pay attention to.
I was wondering, like, when you got hit with it, you knew what hit you, because nothing can throw a log. There's no animal. So, because I've heard other encounters, when they encountered the creature, they knew not to make any kind of aggressive motion. They looked down. They wouldn't even make eye contact because they was afraid it was going to trigger it. And so when I seen you get knocked down because you dropped the camera and everything. It was a ruckus. And when you didn't say anything, I thought maybe you didn't say anything because you didn't want to trigger any more further aggression. And I
got to be honest with you, man. I was so freaked out by what was going on and could not believe what was happening that I don't even know what I was thinking at that minute. Because the bottom line is like, the last thing I expected was this to happen. I mean, it was like, okay, how many, we just walked away from a shelter that looked like, some cavemen built it. You know what I mean? There was two saplings pulled down, and it was like one of those situations where we just started this research campaign. This was literally the first time I took Melanie on our official research. We're going to go document this shelter, because when I was shooting an interview with my brother, we went to the place where he found a track, and then we found the shelter. Well, 2 days later, I was back out there with Melanie, and this is the day. So she'd never really been in the field with a camera shooting. And so this was literally like, we don't know what's going to happen. And then all this was happening. And what's funny is this is what triggered us eventually going back in the area. So in all honesty, I was in a complete state of shock. It would be like you just got in a car accident and you're walking around the scene in shock.
Oh, okay.
That's literally how I felt, man.
That
you know
makes
what I mean?
sense. That makes sense.
I was just in shock. And it was funny because I got knocked down.
Yeah, you did.
When I got out of there, Melanie and I were walking to the car. And she said, it sounded like you got knocked down. And I was like, in a complete state of shock. I was like, oh, no, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, no, everything's fine. And she kept saying, are you sure? Because it sure sounded like you really got hammered in there. And I kept thinking to myself, let's just get in the car. Let's just get in the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is, like I said, man, this is the last thing you expect. I mean, that's the last thing I was expecting. So that's the truth.
So you all end up coming back, and you go to that exact spot, and you were kind of thinking in your mind that they aren't going to be there again, weren't you?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you watch the actual footage, you're going to see from the night where I get hit, I went in there and I said, this has got to be homeless people. I looked at Melanie and I said, this has got to be homeless people. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear cracking and walking. I said, I got bipedal movement, man. This is insane. So half of me is going, there's just some homeless people way out here in the middle of nowhere walking around out here, and they're just really big people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I go down in there because I'm trying to dismiss it.
Yeah.
Is what was happening in my mind. I was having trouble accepting what was going on. And so when I went down in there, I was charging the palmettos, and you're going to see that on the film. I was and trying to push the situation, but I was unaware that there was one behind me, which you'll see in the video,
Yeah.
Standing there. It's like almost 8 feet tall, and it's got a gray face, and it's, I mean, you can see it. Well, I went right past him down off the levee, and I was pushing the envelope, moving forward, and I could hear him moving in the bushes, and that's when I got hit. So in going back into the area the next morning, we'd already had a chance. We were up until 2 o'clock in the morning watching the footage going, I got hit, I got knocked down, and then all this stuff is starting to occur to me. Yeah. Nobody answered me back. I'm saying, who's down there? Who's this? Who's that? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then when I go down in there, this happens. So yeah, we didn't think. I thought, well, if it is Bigfoot, which is a stretch, is what I was thinking. I probably even said this to Melanie. They've got to be gone. You know what I mean? Why would they still be there?
Yeah.
Subsequent investigation into that area after the occurrence where we got growled at has taught us that was actually a den, because I caught juveniles on film and adults in that area. It was a comfortable spot for them to be, where no humans ever went, obviously, because you look at the place and you just don't even want to go in there. And it's just such a tangle. And there's a nice little levee, where there's a bank where they can just, dig up on, and they can sit right there, and they use palm fronds to build little shelters up in there. I've got documentation of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they were actually right there watching people fish.
Yeah.
So at this point, we hadn't caught them on film yet, but we caught me getting hit.
All right.
At least I wasn't aware of it anyway, until about 3 days ago when I started looking back over the footage. Then I saw this guy. But
so that's going to be in the newest one you're fixing to make. Now this you send me a link to the episode where you get hit with the stick and you get you hear this growl, because I want you to explain that growl here in just a second. And I will, in the top right corner of the video screen, you can click the little, if you hover your cursor over the screen, it'll show you a little circle. Click on that. It'll give you a drop-down menu, and I will put Mark's channel featured in there. I will put the video to go see what he's talking about right here. And, so you can get to his channel and you can see this stuff he's talking about. But I want you to explain this second time you went, that growl, because that growl was so bassy coming across. I cannot imagine how scary that was in person, because it scared me listening to it at night. And I kind of wished I didn't listen to it, because I had a hard time sleeping. So
yeah, man, I tell you right now, it was nothing compared to what it was in the flesh. And I know why now, because the microphones that we have are trimmed to eliminate the lower end of the decibel. But I can tell you, we went back at 5 o'clock in the morning, the very next morning. I walked up to the same spot, and there's a big banyan tree. Big banyan tree, man. 15 feet around. And it's right on the bank, so you have, and the only way in is there's like this one little trail going down the side of the levee, so we went down it.
And you and Melanie too, because we haven't really talked a lot about.
Yeah,
she was in front of you, and you had to beep a lot of stuff out. So I want to kind of set that up.
Well, this is the thing. When I went down in, I normally lead the way, so she was behind me. But when we got in there, she was falling and getting tangled. I mean, we're talking about 3.5 to 4 feet of ground brush with vines and everything, and you can't go anywhere. And there's a couple clearing spots, but in those clearing spots is just more different kinds of brush. There's fallen trees and all that stuff. And so I let us down in there, and she was getting tangled up, and I couldn't move. And, we couldn't see anything because it wasn't light out yet. So I was like, I was starting to lose my temper. And so I was like, we need to just turn around and go, because this ain't going to work out. I can't even see anything. I can't film. And I had a spotlight in my hand. I have a few seconds where I hit the spotlight. But when it's that dark and then suddenly you hit the spotlight, it's almost blinds you. And we were so freaked out from watching the film and hearing what was going on and seeing me get hit that it was almost like you didn't want to not be able to see for even a split second. So I said, let's turn around and go. So what would happen was we'd walk down in there so fast that he was laying by this log fall. And we walked right past him, and I mean 4 to 5 feet. And he was laying there. Where we walked in so fast, he couldn't do nothing. So he couldn't move, or he was going to give himself away. Well, we walked past him, and then I turned around a few seconds later, and I was like, this is no good. This is no good. We came back. Well, right when we got to the base of the levee to come back out, Melanie was in front of me. We were standing right next to the log fall, and we stopped. And she started saying something to me. And at that instant, I was within 4 feet of him laying on the ground right there. And he let out the first one, and it just went right through me.
Yeah, yeah.
And the second that it happened, before he was even finished with the first one, I was yelling, go, go, go. Because I'm familiar with what, my head's old right there, you know.
And you were worried about her, I could tell. You were like,
I was freaking out.
And she froze. And we were talking about that with the Diana video that I sent you to watch, one of mine. And she said, I can tell you this, when they growl at you, it'll freeze you in your tracks. And she said that, and she said it in such a way it stood out to me. So when I seen that piece of footage and she was froze and you were saying go, and you ended up having to push her to get her moving, you were like, get going, because we are in a very bad spot. But I want the listeners to know, when they go see this, that it sounded, when I heard it, it was like, I mean, it was just so terribly deep. It was, you could tell it was a monster. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. Well, the funny thing about it is too, and Melanie will tell you the same thing, is at the end of each one of them was an inflection of almost irritation. There was intelligence. There was emotion and intelligence in each one of them, to where you could tell he wasn't giving us everything, and he was adding a little bit of how else to put it.
Like if
you could tell they were governed emotionally and intelligently governed.
It's kind of like,
it was almost like he was saying, "You're too close to me, and you need to go now." Is the way we both. But she, like I said, man, she was frozen, and I'm like, the first growl's not even done, and I'm go, and she wasn't going anywhere. She stood there, and I'm like, and I got like, all this brush around me, and this thing's right here. And so during the second one I just decided I'm going to have to jack her up. You know what I mean? And so I did, man. I shoved her. I hit her so hard that she flew probably 3 feet and landed on her feet, thankfully, on the side of the bank as it was going up. She went probably 3 feet up the bank, but it got her moving. And then I was booking behind her. And then as we were running and going up the hill, you could hear the third one, where he let out the third growl. Wow. And we got up at the top, and she just broke down, man. She was broke down. And me, I couldn't understand. I said to her, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be in the moment here, man. This could have went. This is terrible, So we moved down, a few yards, man, away. And I was like, me, I wanted to get away and turn around and start filming because I had this spotlight. But Melanie went to pieces on me, man, and
that's unbelievable, dude.
First encounter, man.
I mean, I would be thinking, let's live today. It's just amazing. It was when this happened. Had you already heard about the missing campers?
No.
Okay.
No, that didn't happen until months later.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'd kind of like to talk about is the ability of these creatures to hide, and I think that you kind of get the feel of that and kind of learn something about that watching your videos, because of the way you show these things and the way they're just so good at hiding and sneaking. And when you told the story about that 8-foot tall one, albino jumping 30 feet, he's 9-10 feet in the air, he landed on his tippy toes and made no sound. So whenever they're making sound for you to hear, they're doing that for intent. Because they can be perfectly silent. So each little thing they're doing, you're interpreting these things the best you know how, because you won't hear them if they don't want you to hear them. I don't think. because they're good. Maybe, you know, I'm not saying they're perfect with it, but typically they can be very sneaky. You won't know they're there. They can be within feet from you, sniffing you, and you don't even know they're there. So when you realize this, how much did the danger factor go up in you all's mind, knowing that these things are that good and they are potentially very dangerous? And why aren't they? What is their intent coming this close, and you know, etc. We'll start with that.
Well, I think I had because of my sighting of the guy that jumped a trail, I had a very good idea what they were capable of. My issues when we went into these areas was I didn't believe they were in this particular area. It's very close to human habitation, and I just didn't buy it. The other place is in the middle of a huge wildlife management area, and it's in the wilderness. So that, even though the place, you know, seemed like it wasn't the spot for that type of thing to happen, it was a little more I could understand a little more. This particular area, I wasn't expecting any of this. When we went in there, if we encountered something like that, I kind of knew what we were up against a little bit just from my sighting. But when we started having this happen, in my mind, I recognized right off the bat that at any given moment, something could jump out of here or just step out. What are you going to do, run? I mean, it could step right out and just run you down like a dog and beat you to death. And that's a fact. Yeah. What we also noticed, though, and this has been the case history in any of these areas we go into, and I'm not saying that this is the way it is around the country. This is what our research shows us, is that these guys, they have a very superior attitude and view about us. They think that they are able to get away with anything. They're willing to try anything to mess with you. And I think they are toying with us at times. You brought up that thing where they talk about, where you talked about if they make noise when they want you to hear them. There's some accidents where, I think they were unaware that we were there because they were preoccupied with something.
Right, yeah.
And the wind maybe covered our entrance, but they're fully aware when we go in there. If they are close to us, it's because they've allowed it to get that way. And in that last video I made, I was talking about that. The motivation behind that is where I put all the question marks and where my focus has been for the last 3 to 5 months since we've been going in that area heavily. We've had some real close footage where, you can see eyeballs, man, like with the color of the eyeballs. You know what I mean?
I know.
And you're looking at the situation here, and it's like, why are they allowing us to get that close? What's the intent here? There are people coming up missing. And then at the same time, trying to weigh that to against the necessity to document this species. If situations in my life, I'll just say it this way, situations in my life have provided an opportunity to do something that, in my opinion, has not been done with the level of respect or regard for documentation that it needs to have. And I consider it a golden opportunity to do this. And so in weighing the risks, both Melanie and I feel that what we've been seeing in our films and what I've seen with my own 2 eyes has been worth the risk. We are constantly evaluating those situations. And like I said, in previous interviews, there are spots that we will not go at night because they've demonstrated that at night they'll come right up to you and let you walk right by them, and you're in a situation where there's several of them and you're surrounded. I'm not willing to put myself in that position anymore. It's one thing when I've got 4 or 5 people with me, but just me and Melanie in an area where it's going to take. I'm a big guy, and she's not going to be able to drag me out of there. And I look at the situation like we have to use common sense in this. This is a very dangerous situation that we've gotten ourselves into, and so we're applying a lot of common sense into when we go now to compensate for what they were doing, because they were starting to get a little too familiar. And it's one thing, when you film something like this from 40 yards away and it's peeking through the bushes. It's completely different when you have situations where you're within, a couple feet, and you don't even know they're there. That's, Melanie, when Melanie saw that footage for the first time, when she was 6 to 8 feet away from it, and you could tell she knew something was there, but
Yeah.
she
Well, you
gets
talking
real
about the one
nervous
where
and the camera's moving.
she had the iPad. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That you all they're that close to you all the time, and you're just discovering this, man. I'm telling you.
Well, when we get into a certain part of that place, I believe that there are other parts of it that on the way in where they can't hide. But when we get in that main area, oh man, and that's one of the reasons. Like we don't go into the main area even in the daytime anymore. We've come to the conclusion that they've already moved from where they were because we came in.
Yeah,
and we're not going to try to run them out of somewhere else because that could force an aggressive response. That we're not capable of even dealing with.
So what do you think then? Because what I'm kind of trying to prod at here is that you had 2 campers come up missing. You know what the deal was. They don't want to tell you how one of them died that they found. The other one they can't find. What do you think that the campers may have done that crossed that boundary? And why do you think that it is that you haven't yet crossed that boundary? And is there? Well, let's start with that, and then I've got another question.
Well, first of all, what I do, my mind wants to come up with alternative explanations for what happened.
Right.
And there are a few. We got huge gators all through these areas. But to answer your question and give an idea, if they were responsible for these people going missing, I don't believe that there's anything that these people did. I think that
it's a bad day.
That those individuals did. I think that there are a multitude of explanations that we have absolutely and questions that we have absolutely no answers for. We have some theories. I believe wholeheartedly that wildlife management is, that our ability to hunt because there's wildlife management is a byproduct of why wildlife is really being managed.
Right.
I think wildlife management is more about them being real and in all these areas around the country, more so than it is us being able to take a deer.
Now, if I know that the alternative, that what happened is always the best policy to go to. But if these people, if they found this one particular guy and he had been killed and he was dead, and it was an alligator, wouldn't that be reported? Because you hear about shark attacks, they have statistics.
I agree, man. I agree 100%. And I've gone over all these things extensively, man, and looked up stuff. And there's a lot of strange stuff going on with this particular, with these 2, disappearances.
Right.
One guy being found, they didn't explain how he died, or maybe since the last time I tried to check. I mean, I don't check every week what happened to this guy. They said cause of death was unknown. And that's what came out of the wildlife, the game warden's mouth.
If it was a gator, you would know. I mean, couldn't you see evidence?
Pretty much. I mean, I think they're apt to blame gators for a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? And people come up missing in Florida all the time. This particular area, it's rare. And I, to be honest with you, never heard of it, and I've been here for 37 years. I look at it like it's very odd the way that they shuffled it under the table. The fact that the other guy was never found, I don't know, man. I just know that we're filming Bigfoot in these areas, and I think that there's a case history for these guys running into difficulty in certain seasons acquiring food sources. In particular, the seasons where we have a lot of drought. I think that they're more apt, and that's why I say about wildlife management. I think that part of the reason why they manage the wildlife, a big part of the reason, is because if they don't manage this wildlife and keep these deer in a reasonable population, and some of the other game, the turkeys, that these stocks are going to dwindle to the point where these beings, these creatures, these Bigfoot are going to start coming out of these areas looking for food.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, if that's the case with these two missing people, that's a damn shame because, and that's why I say these things need to be documented and officially recognized by science because people should know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
They should know that this has a potential to happen.
Now
I consider that right.
The biologist there knows that at least one of the places you're at knows that these things exist, and because she said, "Where did you see it?" She didn't ask you, "What did you see?" When you all went to report it, she said, "Where did you see it?" So she knew what you saw. Now, when it comes to them being able to find them and these people knowing about this, you had one piece of footage where there was a bobcat walking. You had lived there all your life. You had never seen a bobcat out there ever. And they had that bobcat tagged. There was a tag on its ear. So they know how to find creatures in there, catch them and tag them. So there's no way that they're not aware of there being other stuff out there. I mean, that's pretty good to be able to catch a bobcat. If they tasked you, if they said, "Okay, Mark, I want you to go out there, find this bobcat, catch it, and tag it," that would be a huge feat, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And in the video, in that particular area, we had never seen a bobcat. I've seen dozens of bobcats here in the state of, or in the county of Palm Beach, but right there, it's in, and you can go all through the park, and there's wildlife everywhere. In this particular spot, you rarely see anything. And it was a shock. I mean, so far on that trail, we've caught in 14 months of intensively going in there. We've only seen deer twice. We've never seen a hog in the flesh.
Right.
In that particular spot where they're at. We've seen that one bobcat and 3 turkeys. That's it. The rest of the park, you can hear guns going off, man. You can hear the hogs screaming. You can hear, but in this spot, I think where they live, I think most of the game pretty much, for some reason it steers away from this area. I know it's a Bigfoot that are in there.
So basically,
out of there.
It's easier for you to find Bigfoot than it is for you to find one of those other creatures. But you aren't tracking those, I guess. But
that's the amazing thing is this.
I know it's crazy.
I've caught more Bigfoot on film in this spot, in this wild area.
Yeah.
In this wildlife management area, we've never even filmed a hog.
Yeah.
We've seen amazing. One way in the back, but it's not in the area where they're at. Where they're at, we haven't seen anything. We've seen a good patch of deer come running out of the area to where the joggers were going by.
Yeah.
There's actually joggers going down this road, and these deer are out there on the road. Now, what in the hell would cause wild deer to run out of this area around humans? I have every idea, but most people wouldn't believe me.
Right.
Bottom line is you have to watch the films to see what's going on. I mean,
So
I realize what we're saying is.
Yeah. So basically, the Sasquatch are going to have a place where they live. Because the game and stuff that they hunt aren't going to be in the area they live. Because all those animals know a lot of times when one comes around, you'll see the animals fleeing. So they know they have to live in a certain spot. And when they go to hunt, they have to be stealthy about getting to their hunting grounds and capture these creatures. Because those creatures are very much on the alert when you can tell when people have Bigfoot sightings, they talk about how the deer was acting, running right up and laying under a deer stand, or, the deer will run to a person, it's like, hopefully, the being is scared. The Bible talks about that God would put the fear in the wildlife after Noah's flood of man. Before the flood, like in the Garden of Eden days, allegedly according to the scriptures, and I just thought that's interesting, whether you believe that stuff or not. Animals weren't scared; they weren't scared of human beings. After the flood, the scripture says that God put fear in animals, and animals are typically afraid, except for domesticated animals. The animals run when people come around, so. They run from Squatch because they are predators, like a mouse would run from a cat. not necessarily are, you know what I'm saying? Because there's a little bit of difference of fear of humans than animals fearing other animals. But so anyway, that's very interesting, and I think if you were trying to track down the hogs, you would probably find them too, because I think you're really good at what you do. Now, I had someone send me a story. We could get kind of little off topic a little bit. I had someone send me a story yesterday, and this person was driving, and it was a very wilderness type area in Pennsylvania, I think it was, and he came across a creature that he said had it looked like a spider. It was kind of red, but it was like 3 feet tall. And the way he saw it, he said that it almost looked like it didn't have any eyes or anything. But anyway, he described the creature, and it looked kind of like it had 4 legs, like it was kind of like a spider, because of course the spider has 8 legs. So I get reports sometimes of very odd stuff. Do you think that there's possibly other weird type, strange creatures in the woods that, other than Sasquatch, that are possibly living there? Whether you say for sure or not, but do you think that that's possible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also have taken reports, because I've been involved in the subject for a very long time, and I've taken reports from people that describe the spider, and in their descriptions, and in subsequent research into the Bigfoot species and other eyewitness reports, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of eyewitnesses are telling the truth when they talk about how it dropped to it on all 4s, and it's spread out. And if you view it from the front, there's a very good possibility, and they actually witnessed it standing on 2 legs, on 4, using its, on all 4s, and then back up again. And they described it as a giant black spider, a Sasquatch. But yeah, I do think there are other things.
Yeah.
I've caught some things on film that defy description. I don't really like getting into that kind of stuff, because I don't have any research to back it up.
Right.
But we try to take it slow and focus on what we're doing.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we preclude the possibility of a lot of this other stuff.
Right.
As we go along, when we have opportunities to branch off into those areas, we have every intention of looking into these other types of descriptions.
It's good that you're not throwing that into what your research and stuff, but it's really interesting for a person like me who collects these stories and what have you, to know if people like you that are out there have seen a few things, even if you can't explain it, or you basically say, yeah, we've seen some stuff, don't know what it is. That's completely respectable, and it does not taint your research at all. I don't think. I think it would be more wrong to deny it to where other people feel foolish. You know what I'm saying? So you have kind of noticed some other type stuff.
And I'll give you an example. In Mayaka, I have a strong feeling that we caught a dogman on film, and it's in the Mayaka film. It resembles what eyewitnesses describe as the dogman.
Right.
And it's in the same footage, 40 feet from a Bigfoot. And it just struck me as odd that this thing was there. And in looking at it, it appears to have that snout. I don't remember what episode it's in, but it's in one of the episodes of the Journal. The footage is there, man. You can see this thing. And, we caught several different beings, creatures that are unclassified in 3 minutes, all in the same spot.
Right.
I mean, there's actually footage of a Bigfoot pointing at me as I walk past.
Yeah, no, I've seen that.
You can see its hand pointing at me. Its finger points out. And I look at that stuff and I say, okay, well, this is possible. What else is possible? And we deal with those things as it comes up. I have a very common sense approach to documentation of what's in these areas.
Yeah.
If something else comes up on our film and it's solid, I will show it.
Yeah.
Where as of yet, it's something that you can absolutely ascertain is not a Bigfoot. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have pretty good documentation of the Bigfoot species at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And we're going to continue that. But,
well,
I
think it would be a good idea for you to keep any other stuff separate from your Bigfoot research, just so people take it seriously and stuff like that, because you'll have, people that are really nasty about it. And, but it's interesting. It's very interesting because of different theories that, I don't know anything about, you know what I'm saying? I have theories about it, but I can't prove none of my theories. And we've talked about that, on the side there. Some of the theories basically seem very plausible, and they kind of give explanation for why, how, what, and all those type things. But one of the reasons I was asking about these odd creatures is because I get reports of this, things that look like insects, that are huge, but they're not maybe totally like an insect. It's kind of more mammalian, but weird praying mantis looking things that are huge, and it makes me wonder if I was to go with those theories, of the, Nephilim, corrupted different kinds of flesh, kind of stuff. That's the only explanation I could possibly come up with. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but people are reporting it, and I don't think they're lying. So anyway, I
think that this is all why it's so necessary for us to go in and try to document this stuff. I mean, all it is stories until we start documenting.
Right.
I look at the situation, and it's like I put a lot of stock in what eyewitnesses said, and that's the primary reason why we've been successful in our research campaign, because I listen to what people are saying and evaluating what they say and trusting first and following up on the investigation objectively. If I don't put stock in something, there's no way I'm going to follow it up. You can't investigate something unless you're objective. And I look at it like, the stuff that you're talking about, I'll tell you this much. At this point in our research, I'm inclined to believe that there's something else in the area that we've been investigating for the last 14 months. Yeah. And I'm in the process of trying to document that as well. I haven't succeeded yet, but if I do, you'll be the first one to know.
All right, that's what I was going to ask.
I'll say that. Okay. If I can catch it on film,
I appreciate it.
It's going to shock me, first of all, because I know it was. I thought for a second there I must have been seeing things.
I know that you're really good at finding stuff too on the films. It's amazing, because if I had that much footage, I don't know if I could spot the stuff you're spotting, and then you kind of blow it up and show there's movement, and you do a really good job at that. And I have a couple pieces of footage I would like to send you, because I can't find what they're telling me to look for. So,
okay. I'll be happy to look at it.
All right, man. Appreciate that. So from here, what are your plans for what your agenda, your goal, from this point forward, and kind of how are you going to go about doing this, and for the future?
Well, I mean, our goal from the beginning was to document the species, not to prove it exists. I already know. I saw it. There's thousands of us who know because we've seen it. Our goal was to provide enough documentation to then warrant official scientific investigation. So we're building our case through physical evidence and film evidence, and we're doing good so far. We've got quite a bit, and I'm starting to get, I have an anthropologist that's interested in what's going on outside the realm of the normal communications and the normal personalities in the Bigfoot subject.
Right.
We don't want to go that route, and so as far as taking it further, what we would like to do is help to introduce a more serious, respectful dialogue on the subject. And that's everything crypto reality is about. The Bigfoot Researchers Journal is all about introducing a more respectful terminology, more respectful dialogue on the actual subject itself. If I see something that is on our films and it's obvious what it is, I don't put a question mark behind it. I know what I'm out there hearing. I know what I've seen. I know what I've caught on film repeatedly in this area. It's a Bigfoot.
Right,
if that makes people uncomfortable, they need to learn to get over it, because we're not going to stop doing what we do.
Right.
We document the species. It's real. It's not my fault if this has been withheld from you. We're trying to tell you the truth. So we present the information. It is what it is.
Yeah.
This is what it is, you know.
Whenever you watch the Diana footage, that's just one of the videos that I have, you know, what I believe are actual, you know, Bigfoot and even Dogman. But on the Diana stuff, it's Bigfoot. Some people come and say, oh, that's pareidolia. But after you watched that stuff, did you yourself see things that were in that footage?
Yeah, you can see that there's movement going on there. What I would recommend is trying to upgrade the footage to a higher definition, because what happens when you do that is it takes a lot of the questions out. And you can begin to scrub through that. And you'll see, man, if there's something there, it's going to be real obvious. But when I watched the footage, Melanie and I actually watched that video the night that you contacted me and you sent it to us, and I could see that there's definitely something going on there, man. I mean, it's obvious. You can almost see eyes.
And she only had a phone at that time. But my favorite one was the picture of the one that was that looked like it had the piercing, the chicken bone through the nose, like it had a piercing, and it had something hanging out of his mouth that looked like, to me, like it had some type of little bird of some kind that and it was hanging out of his mouth. That you can see the feet on it, you can see the little wings, and he has like the head in its mouth. That's what it looked like. And it's to me, it's obvious. You can see the two eyes, and it wasn't a blurry picture either. It was a very in-focused picture that was very, very good, and I was able to blow that one up. And some people, like, you know, said, "Oh, that's pareidolia," or it's unbelievable to me that they would deny that one. I can see on the other ones, you know, and you know, if you're skeptical, that's understandable, and I get that. But what I like about your stuff is you're doing a very good job at explaining to people what they're looking at, why it's, you know, the understanding that how good these things hide and blend and things like that. It's not pareidolia. It shows you how intelligent they are to be able to stay concealed, even close to you, and so you do an excellent job at that. So,
you know, when I review footage, I can tell you right now, 99.999% of the footage I review is just jungle. And there's no getting around that. There's a pattern, an anatomical pattern that only fits the Bigfoot species. And it's very obvious when that pops up out of the forest. I mean, I'm staring at an archaic human primate's forehead.
Yeah.
It's sloped. There's a split in the middle where there's muscles over their forehead. There's a very deep set eye sockets. They're rectangular most of the time.
The hooded
very
nose.
Pronounced cheekbones.
Yeah.
The hooded nose. The extended upper lip.
Yeah.
The lower jaw's large. These are, I mean, it's like, you know, I can show 100 hours of footage, and you can go through it all you want. You're not going to find this. It's only in these spots where they live that we continue to catch these guys on film, you know. So the pareidolia thing, I understand where people have difficulty. You know, I mean, it's like some people have made a career out of debunking information that you know, basically makes them uncomfortable. I challenge you to debunk what's on our films, man. Good luck, because I purposely don't show the super questionable stuff. I mean, it's got to meet a standard before we're going to say something. And you can always see that archaic human primate facial structure if we're going to show it.
And the pictures that you've sent me are way better quality on your video. So I just want everybody to know, if you go to and watch his videos, I promise you that the quality is way better. I wasn't able to download them in the high definition quality that he has. So don't judge his stuff by what I'm kind of giving you a little glimpse, because I want you to go watch his videos, and please go subscribe to his channel. watch his stuff. I promise you, it will not be a waste of time. It is very, very good quality. It's fascinating, and he makes it such a good case and presents it in a way that I've been trying to figure out how to, and we talked about this before. It makes you feel foolish to not believe it, and that's how he's able to present the stuff.
Well, I mean, when you're experiencing something, and really, that's how I feel. You know what I mean? I look at the situation like, I understand you've never experienced this. Here's some documentation of what we're telling you.
Yeah.
You can see it on the film. This is what's happening. Yeah. It's real.
To deny it, they basically, what you've seen. To deny that this exists, you would have to call me a liar, first. To deny this is something, we could debate some of it, but you can't debate it all because you've got some
there's too much.
Yeah,
there's too
much. Overall, that's what's really good about it.
Well, the anthropologist said that. He said, at first I was like, but then I started watching and I'm like, man, this guy's he's saying, there's too much stuff here that matches up with type specimens that, we found.
Right.
I mean, I said, you look for the archaic human primate bone structure, you're going to see it. No. And sure enough, man, he contacted me back and he's like, this is like unprecedented.
That's good.
Breaking new ground here. And we're very excited, so
now
we'll see.
And Diana's stuff there, we were talking too, that's something that's interesting. I always figure if it's interesting to me, it's going to be interesting to some other people. When I was talking about the Bigfoot that looked like it had the piercing through the nose, and then she was talking about seeing some of them wearing like a gator skin, like they had culture, because they're intelligent, and they're not just dumb apes. They're intelligent, archaic human primates, like you're saying. So that would mean that there's a possibility of some culture, maybe them wearing something, or a piercing, or that's very, very possible. Whether, I believe I have one picture on that video that proves that they had a piercing. And so have you ever noticed anything where it looked like they might be wearing some kind of primal type, not super complicated?
Absolutely. And it's not that it ended up being that, but we do have, according to science itself, that pre-humans wore skins, they used tools. So this is not unheard of, first of all. So I think that it's very possible if they are cultural, if they do have a culture, that would be something that would be expected.
Right.
I don't know enough to know that that's the case.
They tie knots. I can tell you that.
I do know that for a fact. Yes, I have footage of that. I do know that I have caught the same very large male Bigfoot on film on 3 occasions now. And it's in one of our films. And the first time that I caught him on film, I was looking at it and I didn't understand what I was looking at because there was his face and then another face above him. Yeah. And it looked like, and I started thinking to myself, maybe this is why the Indians made them out to be totem poles. You know what I mean? Like, what are they seeing? Am I seeing the same thing? Is this like some kind of weird hallucination? But it's on film, and I dismissed it. Almost a year later, I caught the same Bigfoot on film, and it has the exact same thing. And I was reviewing footage from that particular area. It looks like he's got another small Bigfoot's head on top of his head. Right. And I was thinking to myself, my God, this is so strange. Well, about 2 weeks ago, I was reviewing a piece of footage from last year's expeditions into that area where we caught that guy on film the first time. And I actually had some blurry footage of him and the thing on top of his head. And I'm like, hey, that's the guy with the two-headed thing, Yeah, right. And then all of a sudden the thing on top turns. And it's one eye, and then it turns, and you see the nose, and there's 2 eyes. Yeah. So there's 2 eyes looking. It turned from the side to this way. So what I think it was it may be a female carrying a juvenile.
Right, yeah.
Whether the juvenile is healthy or it's injured, I don't know. I do know that when we're around and they're trying to get a look at us, there's a good possibility that she just throws him up on top of her shoulder so he can stick his head up above the bush.
Yeah.
Which seems to be the case.
Right.
But yeah, I'm as far as that piece of footage, that's our footage. I'm inclined to think that that's what's going on because they're so curious when we get in there. They're always peeking at us. You know, you'll see that in films. You know, it's ridiculous, really. You know,
you had one picture that looks like an Native American. Really looked Native American in the face to me, because there was more of a bridge of the nose than normal. I think they're as different as people are. Not every person looks the same. You got fat, skinny, you know, black, white. You know what I'm saying? There's people look different. So Bigfoots are going to be different also, you know, but this particular one looks a little bit more human in the face. And I know that you said it's probably the palm fronds, but it looks like he's got something like a headdress thing. Whether maybe they picked that up from Indians and said, you know, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? I know exactly what frame you're talking about, and it's a burgundy color. It looks like a burgundy color on top of his head. I wish that I would have had some clearer shots of that. I think you're 100% right. They do look different. I can tell you this. From the side, they look more apish looking because their jaw is so big on the bottom, the distance.
Right, yeah.
It's so big. From the front, you look like you're staring at a human. They may have different skin tones. The light has a lot to do with that. When you're reviewing film, you say, oh, that's a gray Bigfoot. Well, if the sun's shining on his face, I honestly am starting to take a look at this because we have the same Bigfoot on film and they appear to be different colors based on the lighting.
Right.
Or if they're in the shadow or in direct sunlight. I think they have a heavy oil on their skin, and I think that's probably a logical explanation for why the sun kind of gleams off. I've actually seen a reflection of light come off of one of these guys, and it was like, what? You know what I mean? Like, and I thought, what the hell was that? And I'm looking at the film, and it turns out there's Bigfoot there, but in one spot, I don't know if the tree moved, but the sun hit him just right, and it just gleamed off of him a little bit. So we're learning, man, as we go. But I agree, they do look differently. They do have different colored skin. Their noses are different. Some of them have a very flat, wide nose, as you've seen from the footage in the image I just sent you. There's a few of them in our area that have a very Native American bone structure to their face.
Now that gleaming thing. I know one researcher guy who claimed he was catching them using like pieces of glass that they, I guess, find and what have you. He doesn't know if they're signaling, making glints, signaling or what have you, but he would catch them with in a certain spot, kind of like you do, and he'll go check that spot out and he'll find broken glass around the area that they sit, because they a lot of times have these certain spots they watch from. Like, as you know,
we see that,
and then he also said that a lot of times they'll hold something up in front of their face.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and then
or their hand. I see they use their hand a lot, where they'll cover their. You'll see that in our videos.
Yeah, and I believe that's to break up the natural ability for a human eye or even a Sasquatch or animal or whatever to recognize a face. But if you break that up, it's kind of like camouflage breaks up that's what the camouflage is designed to do, is to break up the outline, to where you don't, because you have a subconscious ability to recognize certain shapes of like a human face. But if you break that up, that would be harder for your eye to pick up on immediately. And
it speaks volumes to the intelligence of the species. The species has one spot on their entire body that isn't already broke up by hair, and that's the face.
Right.
What is the likelihood that they try to hide that? I mean, I've seen that repeatedly in our films.
Yeah.
It's easy to explain why people don't see them when they're in the woods. They're there. Maybe not everywhere, but they're there in these places. And, a solid image is a solid image, and it's easy to see. But you take the fuzz on the outside of these guys, and it just breaks up. It breaks up the image.
Yeah. And
this comedian I like said, "What if Bigfoot really just is blurry?"
Yeah.
And I always say Bigfoot is blurry, man. The bottom line is just they're not. They don't provide a solid image.
Right.
So it strikes me as really, really interesting that they do realize it's you can see it in our films. They realize that they need to cover that, and you'll see that, man. I mean, they'll use a palm frond like a mustache, and their nose will be poking over the top of it. It's funny. It's scary because we're walking right by them, but in the footage, you kind of laugh, you know.
Yeah. I have one piece of footage that it seems like if a human walks up on a Bigfoot, they automatically know to stay perfectly still, even if you're looking at them. That's like a natural instinct to them, because the human eye also notices movement. If something is perfectly still, you might overlook it, but if it's moving, you will automatically see that movement. Your eyes pick up on it. So this one piece of footage I have, it looks like this person caught the Bigfoot kind of in an open area on back in the woods, so it stays perfectly still, but it looks like it's holding something over its face, and it had one hand up like this. And the only movement you could see was when she had moved around with the camera a little bit. You can see its hand go like that at one point, but it was staying still. And I've heard this.
It's so weird, man.
I've heard this a few times, that this one fella, he caught one out in a field, open field, and it was a juvenile, and it stopped, and it was in mid walk. It had one hand out and everything, and it stopped, and he's looking at the guy, and he's like, I can see you. And it was looking scared, like the juvenile didn't know what to do. And he's like, I can see you. And it kind of went like a little bit more toward him. It moved just a little bit. He said, but when he looked off, it started to move. And then when he looked back, it froze again. And then the next time he was sitting there telling his girlfriend, it's like, oh, wow, that's incredible. And he looked back and it was gone. But that made me think about the movement thing, because that's funny, and but the juvenile was
it's
like,
funny
oh
because
my God.
I've experienced that same stuff, so I know, man. It is. It's comical.
But I'm just trying to get across to the viewers that there's a reason why they're hard to spot, because they don't move. I mean, they'll pose as a stump. They'll squat down and sit there and try to look like a stump, and you'll sit there, is that? Nah, and look off, and then end up coming back by that spot and look, and it's gone. And then you'll realize that wasn't a damn stump, So so they're good. They're good at concealing because of their natural look and what have you. Is blends really well in a forest. It's hard to see a deer in the woods if it stands still. I've been deer hunting, and there'd be one right there and didn't even know it, and it's like, dang, there's a deer. I've been looking for one for 3 days. Right there. And I mean, they blend that good. So, and then the ability for these things to know to break their profile of the one recognizable thing that we would, naturally pick up, and then them knowing to stay still, all that stuff. It just is fascinating to me how good they are. If we had Navy SEALs that did as well as these things did, there's no army in the world that could defeat us in the woods anyway, or maybe even dark, time, because these things could take out an entire platoon and with no problem, and they would never even know what happened. Don't you believe that?
Well, one of the things that I learned when I was in the military, in a specialized training, was that the movement has to be very subtle, very subtle. And this is what they perfected. They've just perfected it. And it's really come down to the same reasons for perfecting it. They don't do that. They don't eat. That's the end of it, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, they got to stay still. They got to move in very subtle ways. If there's a deer within reaching distance and they're not in position physically to pounce on it, they've got to get in position. And they're going to have to get used to moving at a deer pick up movement, man. Those things are so skittish.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to wonder, why are these deer so skittish? Now I know.
Yeah.
They're getting their rear ends handed to them when we're not out there hunting them as well.
Yeah. And I believe that the how far one can jump. So they're very capable of running down something, but they don't want to expend that kind of energy, I'm sure, because they have usually a family. They live in groups, and they're huge. typically. So they take a lot of requirement for nutrition to be able to make it. So I would assume they would want to expend the least amount of energy possible to capture the food. So it's a caloric intake, caloric output thing. And but in a pinch, I believe that they can go get some food if they gotta. You know what?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. We're seeing behaviors that that just correlate with hunter gatherer behavior and hunter gatherer existence. And then, I mean, I'm not saying that other people are witnessing something different here in South Florida. In the two primary areas that we've been shooting consistently over the course of 14 months, this is what we're witnessing. This is the exact descriptions that I'm giving you is what you'll see on our films. It's very sneaky. It's very scary from our point of view because we're a lot smaller, and compared to them, we're inept in these areas. And I've been in these areas my whole life, and I thought I was, a pretty damn adept outdoorsman. But compared to these guys, we're nothing. And it doesn't surprise me that the public doesn't know much about this. 98% of the public doesn't even go in the wilderness anymore. Most people live in cities. Millions upon millions, tens of millions. I mean, we have hundreds of millions of people living in cities. It's only people who live outside of those cities, or people that venture out from the cities on vacation, that have these encounters, that catch them on film, that then have the pleasure of being torn apart by skeptics when they try to tell someone. You know what I mean?
What do you believe
this
the
is
percentage?
really going on, man.
What do you believe I mean, just taking a wild guess, what do you believe the percentage of people who have encounters are to the people maybe today in this time are telling about their encounters? A very small percentage, or
you mean the actual people who report it?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I think out of all eyewitnesses, I've done a lot of figuring on this, and just in the people that I know who haven't reported it, I know about 15 people that haven't reported the sightings.
Right.
And I've talked to a lot of people down here, man, grew up in the 60s and 70s in the undeveloped time, and it was just accepted. These guys are out there, they're around, don't mess with them, everything's good. So, in the same areas the Native Americans lived. I mean, it's not like some kind of just suddenly started happening. This has been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That's something that the public just doesn't know. But I would say probably only 15 to 30% of all sightings are actually reported. There's a whole hell of a lot more sightings going on.
Yeah.
But people know what's going on with the stigma that's associated with the subject. So I think they're very reluctant to come forward and that's one of the reasons why I value a lot of the sightings where people do come forward, because it's those individuals that got a very good look at what they saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff, as I've proven through my research, man, is actually reliable. I went into these areas because this is where people said they saw it.
Right. Yeah.
That's how I became an eyewitness.
Yeah. And another thing I think is very cool though is that back in the old days, a while back before everybody is stuck in the houses playing computers and games, things like that, in some areas of this country, people knew about it. It was accepted. Oh, they were just called different things. They weren't called Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That term Bigfoot was coined, after those tracks were found in the Northwest and what have you. Yeah. But people called them different things, whether it was boogers in the South or, wild man, a grass man, or, just different things. So, the people have known about them. And even then they were kind of reluctant to share with just anyone, because certain people in the town might not believe it, and that kind of. So that's very interesting. I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up, man. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this at all?
Just that we work real hard on our films, and everything you see in the field is 100% real. The only thing we do is I slow the footage down, I zoom in on it, and I add a little circle of light to make it a little easier for you if you're not familiar with what you're looking for. We don't play around with it. We have a very high standard to maintain the integrity of what's going on. You're going to get the truth of what's happening here in South Florida in our films. That's the bottom line.
Yeah,
and Bigfoot Researchers Journals for real.
Right, and you all seriously go check this out. He makes the show similar to like Finding Bigfoot style of kind of like a reality show, but he doesn't go out there and say, "Did you hear something? Did you hear something?" and never show nothing. He shows stuff. It's incredible. Finding Bigfoot needs to hire this guy because I mean, you know what I'm saying. I do appreciate the Finding Bigfoot show because they brought a lot of attention to the subject and just increased the interest and what have you. So it's really created an opportunity for a lot of people to get into it. So it is an awesome thing in that aspect. And I also do know, I have talked to a few people that's worked with them, that's not really how they research. They just do that basically for the show because they know that you can't really do the show and do it right. So,
not on national TV.
Right. Yeah. You know, they don't go out in the woods with, film crew when they're really squatching. And they, and I've heard, stories of, that are, they don't even want to tell, so there's a lot more goes on with them guys than we think. But anyway, Mark, man, I really appreciate you coming on. You've been a fantastic guest, and you and me, man, are going to be staying in touch. You have all my numbers, I think. You've got my home number.
Yeah.
I've called you, save all my numbers and stuff and call me. You can call me anytime. Most people come on the show, they call me sometimes, I talk to some people a couple times a week, don't be a stranger for sure. And we're going to do some squatching, here sometime.
Absolutely.
And I love Florida, so I'm gonna come down there sometime, and maybe not too long from now. And
we'll head out and do some bass fishing too.
Dude, I'll bring my new fishing pole. I had a subscriber sent me a fishing pole, and it's like $160 spin cast. It's pretty cool. Yeah, nice rod and reel, man. It was really firm rod and really smooth reel, Cabela. So I'm looking forward to using that. Florida is fun. I love coming down there. So I'll come down there and we'll hit some good spots to eat. And
sounds good.
The seafood's awesome down there because they get it.
Yes, it is, buddy.
Don't have to ship it far, So, but anyway, thank you very much. And I'll be talking to you. I've got some clips and pictures and stuff I want to send you anyway. And for everybody out there that watches my channel, go click on this little circle up on the right of the screen. Did I do that right? When you're looking at me, the right side of the screen, and you'll get a drop down menu. Click on his channel, go to his channel. I'll put, a video. Mark will send me a link of the one with the growls and stuff and him getting hit with a branch. But go watch his playlist. He's got playlists. Start at the beginning and watch them. They're worth watching. They're really good, and I know you'll enjoy it. So, thank you, YouTube land, for watching the show today. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.